Welcome to Film Phreeks. This is Justin Llewellyn.
Eddie Williams.
And tonight we're going to be doing another Netflix review this time. We actually have a double feature that we're going to be doing, we're going to be discussing Polar, which is directed by Jonas Åkerlund, and it stars Mads Mikkelsen, Vanessa Hudgens, Catherine Winnick, and among others. And this is actually based on a comic book series of the same name, and it involves where you have Mads Mikkelsen, who's playing a guy who's about to go in retirement because he's a former assassin who used to work for this guy who does all these different tasks for him and stuff to do hit contracts. And basically, he gets word that a former assassin that was like him reached retirement, and he realizes that the guy, whenever someone goes into retirement, they end up getting killed off one by one. They end up getting killed off by his former colleagues of the assassins.
Basically, it's the owner doesn't want to pay the retirement fees that they sign before they become assassins, so he has people going out and doing hits on everybody who is starting to retire or getting close to retirement.
Yeah.
And then Mads Mikkelsen's character learns that one of his colleagues, one of his partners, which is played by Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Was popped in the beginning, and basically he's out to watch his ass.
Yeah. And the rest of the film, he also comes across this girl played by Vanessa Hudgens, and there's a dark, there's something that involves with him and her that the movie goes into, that they explore their relationship between, and they start to bond with each other, and basically he has to try to avoid all the assassins going after him, and then kind of like you see in a lot of other films like John Wick, he has to stop them in the end. Now, here's some backstory. Yeah. Now, this film, like we said, this was based on a comic book series, which was also called Polar. And I'm not really too familiar with it, but apparently it's a series of graphic novels that came out in 2012, and it's been known. When I saw the previews of it, I kind of got curious because I like Mads Mikkelsen as an actor, and I've seen that he's starting to really, I usually see him in like different villainous roles, like in Casino Royale and stuff. And it was
and he was in Star Wars, and then he was in he plays Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, on the TV show.
On the show.
Yeah.
And from what I know, is everything he pretty much does is always really good. And it seems like this year he's going to be doing a lot of Netflix stuff. I believe Arctic, which comes out later on, is also on Netflix.
Yeah, and what got me interested was, because the first time I watched the trailer for this, I thought for some reason that this was going to be like a spin-off or something related to John Wick, because the way that the kind of style they're going for, it really kind of had that John Wick kind of vibe to it.
It does. It's whenever he does his like darkness stuff and assassin stuff, you get that very blue-black like you do with John Wick.
Yeah, and also,
not to mention, he looks like he could play John Wick if we were to do a 30 years later where he's old.
Yeah, and another thing that reminded me of it kind of had like a Metal Gear Solid vibe, because from what I saw in the previews, I thought they were doing like a live-action Metal Gear Solid adaptation of the video games.
Yeah. What's funny is, we'll go into more detail, but it also has another movie which surprised me, and we'll get into the tone later, and it has something to do with how they go with the more comic book approach, where it looks kind of Zoolander-ish, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's where the tone gets kind of crazy.
So I was actually pretty curious about this. I actually kind of got excited to watch it, and upon seeing it, I can say that I was a bit disappointed with this.
Yes, I was a little disappointed with it. I don't think it's an F- like a lot of people's been saying. However, it was not the greatest.
No. So to get my pros out of the way, I'll say Mads Mikkelsen. He was great. He was great. He was awesome as the assassin, and he really brings a lot of he brings a lot of earnestness and a lot of that calm kind of John Wick kind of tone you're thinking of for a guy that's about to retire and stuff. And what really draws me in the most is you start to learn more things about his character, into why he, he's like haunted by nightmares and stuff. Haunted
by some stuff, and one of it's really spoiler heavy, so we won't go into it. But he sees scenes of something that comes to the climax of the movie that we'll find out. But then he also sees he has haunted images of all the people he's killed in the past.
Yeah, and then what my other biggest praise I have is
which I enjoyed. I thought those dream sequences were kind of cool.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes they do get repetitive, and they can kind of remind you of last year's Slender Man, but it was still done a little bit good.
Well, and what's interesting was that the director of this was the same director who did Spun from 2002, which, if you've seen that movie, it uses very similar editing tricks like this movie does, where every time someone be doing like drugs or something, it goes into that kind of fast motion type of technique.
Yeah, I will say another thing I did enjoy is because in the movie, this ain't really a spoiler, where when he retires, he's kind of like retired in a small town in Montana. The cinematography was beautiful.
Yeah, it was, especially the snowy atmosphere. And I also got into the relationship that he builds with Vanessa Hudgens' character, because she's his like neighbor that lives in the same area he does in the woods, and you start to get the vibe of like he can kind of like, he's trying to keep himself like secret from her. But she...
it seems like he's also trying to establish he wants to live a normal life, character. Just a normal life. He wants to forget all what he's done for a living.
And I
thought... see when he's doing that with Vanessa Hudgens' character, where he's like trying to help her out with, around the property and stuff.
Yeah. And I gotta admit, like, this is, she really goes for it in this. I think that she really carries a lot of emotion, and, she's really, you really feel for her the way the story goes along in this.
Exactly. I thought she did really good.
Yeah. Now, the rest of the pros I'll say is when the movie does get into a lot of the different action sequences, it does get pretty fucking brutal.
Oh, dude, yeah. The brutality, I will say that surprised me, and I thought in a good way. It was done with perfection, like gruesome, and the torture scenes in this film was beyond fucking brutal.
Yeah, definitely.
And I will say that I was actually shocked by the detailed sex scenes they had in it.
Oh yeah, dude. This movie, if this was released in theaters, this would have been a fucking hard R, definitely. Like,
oh, dude, I would probably had to cut that sex scene down a little bit, because they
went fucking going for it,
like he did in Drive Angry, but went more detailed.
Yeah, it actually reminded me a lot of that of Drive Angry with that scene. Not gonna go into spoilers, but it comes out like that, literally. But anyway,
it literally almost does that. Yeah, so like, that was kind of cool, and all that. And, I mean, I guess that even though the tone, I'll get into the tone, what you think about the villain?
Well, I'll get into that here later on with my cons, but my last pro I'll say is that when it does use it, it does have a memorable score that I kind of like. It kind of has like kind of a synthesized kind of 80s kind of vibe in some scenes. It really gives you that kind of gritty, like grindhouse feel, which I thought was kind of cool. Other than that, this is now we pretty much get to our cons, and I can say that the villains were not really very generic and kind of annoying, honestly.
I was actually, when we were introduced to the big old chubby guy as the villain, he was weird, and he kind of reminded me when he was putting all the lotion on him. Reminded me of that dude from Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah,
that's wearing all that lotion. I'm like, the fuck? That literally looked could be his young kid.
Well, that, and I get the movie's trying to go for that kind of comic book vibe with its villains. So the actual mercenaries that are assigned to kill Mads Mikkelsen, they have quirks that they kind of give them throughout, but I don't know, for some reason, they came across as very cringeworthy in a lot of scenes, especially with some of the dialogue they give.
They were cringy, and what hurts the film, honestly, the tone with the John Wick in one half, then you have the family, kind of more of a drama in the beginning, where he's just trying to live normal, and then you have Zoolander with these guys. Because when these villains come in, they change the color scheme to like a Dick Tracy look.
I know, or
Zoolander.
It honestly,
it's all yellow, and like and then they do scenes where, like in the city, they try to. It seems like they're trying to be like a little bit similar to Sin City.
That in either that or I was gonna say, if you ever seen
tone, that's what I'm saying. Like the tone is like, it's like watching three separate movies: a drama, John Wick movie and a fucking like Zoolander, Dick Tracy, Sin City. I'm like, the
Yeah,
fuck is going on here?
the villains they reminded me a lot of those fucking villains from Punisher Warzone when you had like those very over the top kind of people that are do that, especially the main boss. It came to a point where I'm like, how am I don't.
And then not only that, that Asian killer, she kind of reminded me of Lucy Liu in Kill Bill.
Yeah, she did definitely, and also
like a Doritos version or cheap Sam's Choice. Like the whole like comic book is very what I was want to get into in another con. While we do enjoy those type films because Sin City is badass, just a lot of those type films are really good when they do that comic book feel. This one feels, you can tell because of the Netflix straight to video release type feel. It is very Sam's Choice.
Yeah, and not to mention the other thing I can say is this film for like the first like hour, it feels like it goes into territory that comes across as very repetitive at times too. Because not to go into spoilers, but almost every scene with these assassins, they literally do the same fucking scenes over and over again.
Yeah, it's like I thought the movie should have been called Headshot because the first hour literally is nothing but people getting shot in the head.
Yeah.
It's like nothing new. I'm like, are you going to fucking do anything? Not to mention, speaking of tone earlier, when they do show the villains, like I said, it goes into like Zoolander territory. It tries to be a comedy.
Yeah, and it comes across as forced because it really, the way they deliver their lines and stuff.
Like the part where they're trying to kill that fat dude, and he's like, help me! Like Zoolander.
Yeah, or that doctor.
Like, what the fuck is going on here?
And there's also this doctor that they come across that I felt like literally he was on reboot the whole time because his whole fucking running joke is that he's saying yes all the time.
Yeah, yes, I know. I did thought the main villain, he was too over the top.
Yeah.
Way too over. Like he was, I don't know, man. I mean, I will give him one thing. It looked like he was having fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So it does look like he's having fun, but I think that he approached it a little too over the top, too pushy.
I agree. Now the biggest fucking
it was like because I actually kind of cringed when I some of his lines. I'm like, the fuck is this dude? This dude's weird.
Yeah.
And then now with that, Mads Mikkelsen, like I said, I enjoyed his character. However, that beginning first 20 minutes where you're trying to establish that he's living a normal life, they draw the fuck out of that. Where it shows him get a dog, then he goes and buys movies and rents movies too, and then it shows him like, then he wants to buy a goldfish, so then he studies he buys books, and they go on this forever. I'm like, God damn, do something.
Yeah, but the biggest cop out for me the most is that fucking climax. I won't go into detail, but let's just say that it builds up to something big, which kind of goes down when it gets there, and they do have some really cool fight scenes that take place. And this big shootout that takes place, but after that, it's after this all happens, it's fucking done in like a minute. Like literally, this whole climax was so.
Let's just say he goes ape shit. And it's good when he goes ape shit, man. This is where the movie's probably the biggest highlight for me is when he goes ape shit.
Yeah, but let's just say all that comes to.
Then I thought, oh damn, this might actually, damn this did a 180. Now it's starting to be, turning kind of good. And then that anticlimactic, and then they go and then you notice there's 15 more minutes left, and they just draw it out. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, mine knew the ending of Glass.
We're not going to go in any detail, which really I didn't care for that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, that to me was like, oh man, because that's what the trailers build it up to. It's like, yeah, you're finally going to see something epic. No, it doesn't fucking go there.
Yeah, and like you said, we're not gonna. We're gonna have another Netflix film that was underwhelming. It just seems like Netflix, for the first time, is starting out not so good.
Yeah, so with that, I'm gonna give. Overall, I'd say for the moments that do kind of have going for it, I get what it was trying to do, but it was very disappointing for me. So with that, I'm going with kind of a high disaster grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little different from Justin here. I'm gonna be a little lenient because there was a little bit other stuff they did good, but it's still not a good movie. With that being said, I'm going extremely low, average Joe.
Fair enough. And for those of you who have also seen Polar, let us know in the comments below of what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, you can feel free to like and subscribe to our channel. Check out some of our other reviews here on our website at filmphreeks.com. And we'll be seeing you in our next review. We'll see you later.
Later.